Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Sessions with Berries. We have Anim Aweh, LCSW, here with us today. I was afraid I was going to mess up her name. You guys know I mess up everybody's names. Is a licensed clinical social worker, entrepreneur, and mental health advocate, reshaping how communities engage with care. A proud Boston native and child of immigrant parents, Anim has over a decade of experience in public health and clinical work. She's helped launch major behavioral health initiatives, led clinical product development for AI mental health startups, and sits on multiple advisory boards. As the founder of Therapy Over Silence and the author of Elijah Was Brave, the first children's book on mental health written for Black boys, Anim blends cultural insight with innovation to break stigma and expand access. Her mission is to fuse tech, community, and clinical integrity to move mental health care forward. Welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. I feel like we could literally have 3 podcast episodes with everything that you do.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to hear about you and everything you do. Maybe you could just give us a little intro, like how you got into this place where you're doing all of these different entrepreneurial type things, advising and writing books and all of that. Maybe we could just talk about your journey a little bit and how you got here.
It kind of starts back into being a teenager, believe it or not. I got exposed really early to the public health arena. Then I went on to get my first degree in public health. And so I've always kind of had my hands in like product or like program development or like creating sort of long-term campaigns around health-related issues, like by virtue of my degree and by virtue of that early on experience. So then fast forward, went on and got my master's in clinical social work, specialized in health and mental health, because I always wanted to keep that public health element. And I just like I had some really amazing internships who let me kind of build out programs early on, right? Like I launched a program with my Boys and Girls Club that I grew up at, actually, which I'm so grateful for. We like deployed the first ever mental health program. And, fast forward to that, I was working at Planned Parenthood. We launched the first behavioral health initiative for Northern California. And so like, I've always had this thing about like program development. And so that was always something that I've been passionate about, like how to integrate my clinical skills or how to integrate my public health skills and kind of bring it full scale, if you will.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So you did all that. So you kind of like jump in, build these programs and jump out into other roles. Is that kind of how it's gone for you? Or you still have your hand in some of all of that?
Yeah, I still have my hand in a couple of things, especially as like an advisor or clinical advisor. So like, I will have like certain hours that I allocate to these companies that will consult me regarding some clinical issues or like program issues. And so I still have my hands in a few things, which I'm pretty grateful for.
That's amazing. Do you still see clients? Like, do you have a private practice also? Or are you out of that? Because I have like 2 clients left, kind of like totally moved out of that. But I'm always curious if people still have one foot in and one foot out kind of thing.
I definitely have one foot in, one foot out. I have about 6 clients total, I think. So like I'm keeping it at that, no more than that. And I like this balance.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I like it a lot too. It's a lot of fun. So everybody always asks me, and I'd love to ask you, how do you get into like consulting for companies, like companies developing products for therapists? Because I mean, it's been fascinating for me. It's been the coolest thing ever to be able to like contribute a clinical voice to these products. And I just wonder, like for you, like how did you get into it? Did you have any advice for people that might want to do the same thing?
Yeah. I think relationships are everything. Like the power of networking is really what got me through these doors. And I can think specifically, like there was a time period I was living in the Bay Area, and obviously during that time, it was like the tech boom, right? Like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley was like known for its tech ecosystem, and I was living there. I was a social worker.
Yeah.
And by virtue of being a social worker, I had a sister who was like transitioning over to technology. So I'd attend all these events with her, and I would just listen to these conversations, right? And I'm just like, these people need mental health professionals, right? And so I would literally, from there, I would just pitch myself. I remember my first pitch was to Lyft, right? We went to some Lyft party or something like that. And I just like pulled one girl aside. I'm just like, hey, I'm a mental health therapist. And like, it didn't necessarily turn into anything. But what I am grateful for is that she remembered me, right? And she like kept me in mind for like when she saw future problems within the organization, she called me back and just like, hey, we'd love to have you come and talk to us and help us figure out some things. And so like it just literally started like putting myself out there and connecting with these people that are within these organizations. or somehow aligned within these organizations. And I just literally put myself out there. So connections and networking is like the biggest thing around this, and being strategic, right? Like we all have social media. I'm on everything. And so I'm really strategic around my messaging on particular platforms. So like LinkedIn, I feel like is a really great platform to like connect with leaders, connect with people who are looking for people like us. How are you like connecting the two worlds, right? How are you connecting mental health and like the corporate life, right? Like make that clear. That's the issue you solve, or that's the thing you kind of work around. And so that's my strategy from a social media perspective. But like networking is everything. Like I would not have been in any of these spaces if I didn't have the connections that I did with people, and like, or people just remember me from 10 years ago and just know like, hey, that's a licensed clinical social worker. She knows people. Like, I'm going to call her in to do this thing.
That's amazing. And it sounds like you made yourself memorable, like with that pitch to the lift person. I think social workers may be wanting to get into that space. They hear the word pitch and it like freaks them out. Like, what is a pitch? Could you give a basic, like, what's a pitch maybe for somebody that's like, huh? What do I do?
I like to think of it as just like, it's like you're walking into an elevator, you're making, a quick conversation with somebody. What's that 10-second thing that you're going to say and put together to like let people know who you are, what you do, right? And so the elevator pitch, if you will, is like a great way to kind of just start conversation. Like, hey, I heard you mention this sort of thing is going on. Well, I would love to talk to you. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working with people, developing programs. I would love to see how this is going to like maybe align and how we can come together. And so it really is. We tend to overthink it because it sounds like this big fancy business word, but it really is about just connecting with somebody and aligning the interests, right? Like you talked about this problem, I heard you, right? That's affirming that I'm listening to you and that like I've kind of paid attention to what you're saying. So like I think it's just connecting with people and just letting them know who you are and kind of aligning the interests. So you can do that informally or you can do that formally, right? And so like there's cold pitches and there's warm pitches, right? And so like that's when you get into the technical parts about that regarding the relationship or the extent of the relationship. And so it's really just connecting with people, like putting yourself out there, like finding a commonality and just going with it.
I love that. And as therapists or social workers or whatever, like we're so good at that, right? Just like finding the common thread and using it, to help a client or to make connections and say, I can help you.
When I was working in behavioral health, I would triage throughout the clinic, right? So like at any given time, I get a call from the doctor, like I need you to see this patient in room 2. Okay, I got to run up there. I've never seen the patient before, but we got to establish some sort of connection so that I can help them feel safe, help them feel heard, and make them want to open up. So we have this natural gift already. Like we just kind of overcomplicated.
I love that. Like we're totally scrappy, right? If anybody had to work in an agency for any amount of time or a hospital setting, like you get scrappy. You figure out how to make it work. Yeah, I love that. I love it. I love it. So let's talk about entrepreneurship and all these different things you're doing. And then you're also helping other therapists do the entrepreneurial piece. So maybe we could talk about that. I also want to talk about AI. I'm so excited to talk to you about all this stuff. But let's talk about the entrepreneurial piece and, maybe start with the basics. Like first, how do we know that we want to like expand outside of like the one-to-one, or maybe, if we're just seeing clients only, like when do we know it's time to scale a little bit? And then maybe some tips around how do we do that? How do we get started with that? How do we even figure out how to scale and what to do? Yeah.
Well, for me, it was when I got out of community mental health. I was burnt out. Like I was burnt. I did not want to see another client for a while. And so I'm like, this isn't sustainable, right? One of the things I always ask myself, my clients, is like, is this sustainable? And I'm just like, I have so many skills, or like I knew as therapists, we have so many skill sets foundationally that could support like organizations or support other people. And so like, I knew from there, like I had no choice but to scale, right? And so like, I was intentional about my social media. I was intentional about my LinkedIn. And then one day, somebody that I knew from long ago saw one of my LinkedIn posts, just like, hey, Anim, I seen you post this. I would love for you to come do a presentation or a workshop within my organization. Bam, there it goes, right? And then it's sort of just like a rapid fire from there. And you refine, you get better. But like, I had no choice but to scale because I was burnt out, right? And then I stayed in community mental health for a long time. They forgave my student loans. I'm very thankful for that. But I'm just like, I can't keep working this one-to-one because I was tired of exchanging my time for an hour, right? Like that hour 160 or 150 rate, like it just didn't make sense to me anymore. I'm like, I can make way more money. And naturally, unfortunately, this might be a byproduct of growing up with immigrant parents, growing up in poverty. I have to hustle. I'm a hustler by nature. So like, I'm just like, I can make more money doing an hour presentation. Like, I can make $1,500 doing this 1 hour presentation versus like this 150 reimbursement. So for me, it was a natural
Yeah.
thing. And for others, I would implore you to kind of think about first, what do you see as your transferable skill sets, right? You gotta understand that, and that's what I work with my clients in my one-to-one setting. Like, you got to be able to identify those transferable skill sets, because without that, like this, you're not going to be able to make that transition, I think, successfully. And so, a lot of therapists, what I find is we get stuck in sort of like, well, I'm just a therapist. No, you're actually more than that. You're a relationship builder. You're like a great, effective communicator. You can teach other people communication, right? And so you got to get to that where you should transition from thinking sort of from a clinical perspective to a more macro, if you will. And that's kind of what I help people kind of do early on. And like thinking about some of the ways you can use those transferable skills, right? So like one of the things I also talk about is like doing immigration evaluations and assessments.
Oh, nice.
Very, very awesome, very lucrative, if you will. And I don't do it just because
Of
it's
course.
lucrative. I'm passionate about the
But
work,
it's
but it's
smart. You're
great that I
making smart
paid well.
decisions and still helping people. Yeah.
We're all assessors by nature of our licenses. We're all evaluators. We've done this work. So like, why not, make $1,000 for this clinical
Yeah,
evaluation cash?
totally. I mean, it's like a no-brainer, you know?
That's just how I think. I'm just like, how can I maximize my time? How can I maximize the amount return on, the time that I'm spending on something? And so that's how that transition happened. But I'm very intentional about social media. I'm very intentional about where I like lay my messages. I'm very intentional about like connecting with people or like having the right people kind of see what I'm doing. And so that being intentional is very important on top of like identifying those sort of transferable skills.
So smart. When you were on your LinkedIn and that person reached out and said, hey, do you want to do a speaking gig for us or whatever? Were you like, ooh, I don't want to be a speaker? Or were you like, yes, this is an amazing opportunity? Talking about transferable
Yeah.
skills, like, was that a skill you already had? I wonder if somebody else
Yeah.
might have said no. Like, I just wonder how that happened for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely got scared. I mean, like, I'm not a speaker. What am I going to sit on stage and
Yeah.
talk? But I'll never let anybody else know,
Yeah.
right? I'm the type of person I'd rather fail forward. I'm going to learn as I
Ah,
go. I'm never going to say no. I'm not going to count myself out. I'm not going to do all that. I'm not going to self-sabotage. Like, I'm just going to I'm going to try it
I
out,
love it.
right? And so, like, so when she reached out to me, I asked for a meeting with her. We got really clear on what they were looking for, what were the problems, right? So I was assessing the problem for the organization,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm doing a clinical assessment. And so like it helped reaffirm for me, like, oh, this is
You
not
got
that
it.
bad. I
Yeah.
can do this. Okay. So like ask for that meeting, ask for that tea time, coffee time, whatever you want to call it. But like that helped kind of affirm, like, yeah, I can do
Yeah.
this.
That's amazing. I love that so much. So when you're working with other therapists that are trying to scale, I guess you were saying you do just like a skills assessment. So, for the listeners out here, it doesn't have to be speaking. It doesn't have to be presentations or something like that. There's so many things you could do. I wonder, do you have like 20 things or 5 things that you always say, like, let's look at this and this first to see what fits for you?
Funny enough, I actually built an AI bot that like it was like an AI quiz that like I give to people to
I
like
love it.
take that as an initial sort of like praxis, and then like that kind of the AI will generate what it believes like you could kind of do or what directions you can kind of move in. So like that gives us like a sort of foundational, not that it has to be, the thing, but it kind of helps them kind of see like, oh, I never considered this, right? What's that going to look like for me to get this next step or get to this next step? And so I do that sort of initial assessment. And then I really just kind of, again, we work on sort of like really grounding them in these sort of transitional skills and like helping them feel confident. I help like get them these pitch templates, right? I help them identify like from these transferable skills, what are the dream companies that you want to work with, right? Let's identify those dream companies. Now we're going to take it a step further and identify like some people that you may be connected with that might know those people, right? Those are the warm leads, right? You have some
Nice.
level connections, and so we'll also explore like the cold. Like I had no connection with this person at all, so I got to be extra strategic, and we have like templates for that as well. And so we take different approaches for
Yeah,
sure.
that's amazing. Oh my gosh, how exciting. We touched on the AI. You built out this tool to assess it. Let's dig into AI a little bit. Like I'd love to hear what you're doing in the advisory capacity and, what you're running up against working with therapists, maybe you're introducing AI to help them with their workflows and their scaling and all of that. Maybe we could just kind of talk about all of that. Yeah.
I don't really know how the AI thing happened, but it started from like creating content and then it developed into a relationship. Well, like a working professional relationship, and then it kind of turned into this thing like, hey, Anim, we really appreciate your clinical insight. Like, we'd love for you to sort of support us in the product development, right? Making sure that the tool is clinically sound, right? First and foremost, and that too, like the interventions that we're using in our clinical practice and day-to-day practice, like those are accounted for, like training the AI model essentially, right, from an actual therapist. And so like that's pretty much what that looks like, and making sure that things are safe, right? Like, well, one of the other projects that I work with was like the insurance company funded this project. And so they wanted coaches initially, right? So like I had to make sure that an SOP was put together for the coaches, making sure that anything that was outside of the scope of the coaches, like I had to intervene and create a plan for that and making sure that person got safely transitioned. So like, again, you see how this is all connected to our clinical skill sets. And so fast forward particularly with the AI. And so just right now working as like a product sort of overseer from a clinical capacity and just making sure that it's safe and sound, and most importantly, that it's doing what it should do. So part of what I'm running into is like there's a natural fear around AI, particularly around therapists. I think it's hit us a little harder because I think what I'm hearing mostly is that there's this fear of us losing our jobs, right? Because it has like impacted a lot of people and their jobs. So I get that. So I think one of the things that I'm helping or want to help therapists understand is that number one, it's not going to take our jobs, right? Our work is just too important for a robot to come in and replace it. That's just personally how I feel, right? But I do think that there's a space for us to sort of support its growth and kind of make sure that it's going in the right direction, right? So this idea of like algorithmic justice, right? So making sure that making sure that the AI that is trained on is not trained on based on old models of like that reinforce these sort of biases, reinforce racism, reinforce sexism. And so like that's part of the thing that I'm also concerned with, right? Making sure that the AI that we're building or the software that we're using isn't reinforcing sort of those negative things. Also making sure that it's accessible, making sure that equity is built within it. And so all these different type of things that I'm considering that they may not consider because they're not therapists. Right. So that's what you said earlier. Like everybody probably needs a therapist within the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah. We need to sell that to the whole world. I was listening to a podcast recently and it was like 10 women. It was like on a panel and their only mission was to make sure that the AI like had equity with women. Like they were just like training all these products, like they were getting out into the world to spread that message to help train the products in the back end. I just thought it was so interesting and cool. And then I read a Forbes article yesterday about ChatGPT or OpenAI announced that they think they're going to start setting up, I don't know if you saw this, but setting up flags basically for keywords or trigger words basically, and they're going to bring in they're going to hire therapists to be on their directory essentially. So these flags come up, they're going to refer to their therapists in their network, supposedly is the next step, which I hope really happens and doesn't turn into like BetterHelp.
That's awesome. I mean, and again, that's an opportunity for us as therapists get that and say, okay, well, how can I, and this might be a long show, how can I work with OpenAI, right? OpenAI started out as a nonprofit and then emerged into this big, massive machine, and they still need people like us as they continue to grow and scale. And so I see it as an opportunity. I don't see it as something that's a hindrance. I don't see it as something that's going to take my job. I see it like I can help this thing get better and we can help this thing be safe. Right? Why not? Why shouldn't it be me?
Right.
That's just the way I take it. Why shouldn't it be me? Like a part of this conversations or part of this sort of development in these products.
Oh yeah, I love this attitude so much. It's amazing. Instead of the fear, right? Because I don't know if you're in the Facebook groups much, but it's everywhere. The fear around the energy consumption and they're taking our jobs. And anytime we interact with it, we're training the model to work, take our jobs and all of that stuff. It's just everywhere, and I'm kind of in your camp. It's like, how can we adapt to it and bring it into our work and make our work easier and still be able to serve our clients? Because it's never going to be able to emulate rapport. I mean, like you were saying, I feel like,
No,
you know,
it's not going to sort of replace humans. I'd like to think, and like and also we can make sure it's going in the right direction. And like my sister always tells me, like the early adopters are the ones, like if I'm being frank, right? Those are the people that make the most money, and those are the people that are going to help shape this
yep.
technology. Wait, yeah, I mean, fear has its place, but like if you let that consume you, you're gonna fall behind, right? This thing is here to stay. This thing has been here for years, right? When we think of like predictive models that have already been within existence, but now we're sort of leaning more towards the generative models. Like these things have been here. It's just like now it's in the forefront. So you can either like get on board or you can decide like I'm going to stand back. And I just don't think it's beneficial for us. We should be a part of the development. We should be a part of the conversations.
Exactly. Especially as social workers, like advocating and trying to guide it in the right direction. I love
Absolutely.
that so much. Yep.
Absolutely. All of us.
So, so do you have any like like your go-to tools, like AI tools that you love to use? I usually do this at the end of the podcast. I'm just kind of like, what are your like go-to right now that you just are loving and can't get enough of, like tool wise? Not maybe for just therapists, but just in general, like to make your life easier. Is there anything you're using?
So quad AI, I tend to like because I feel like it knows my voice and like kind of understands who I am and what I do in a better way than ChatGPT
Yeah.
does. Well, because I had a paid version of it. I do use AI notes
Yeah.
because I'm confessing over notes. I've used auto notes for a long time. And not only because like I've been supportive of them, but like I just feel like it's the safest one for me personally. And like everybody has their own qualms on
Yeah.
that. And then recently got into Emergent AI, which is like a full stack app that like you can build an app on with
Oh my
AI. Like,
God,
can
I'm
you
obsessed.
imagine?
I'm building
You're
out web apps like crazy. Tell me what you're doing.
right. Like, so like right now I'm trying to work on a studying tool for like all therapists, well,
Oh,
like mostly master's level, right? Like
nice.
the LPCs, LMSWs, and LMFTs. And so trying to see how we can support how AI can support us with that without and also like acknowledging the fear based part, but also like, hey, technology can help like with some of these things. So just playing with Emergent with
That's
that
awesome.
and see what happens. And I mean, Canva, go
Is
ahead.
Emergent an app? Because I'm using like something called Greta right now that I'm obsessed with for web apps, but I'm just wondering, is Emergent like an app that you're using or?
Yeah, so I'm using the web-based tool, but
Okay.
like I think you can download it as an app as well, just because like when you're doing something like that, I just want to see how it looks like first on the web-based then the app. So yeah, it's been pretty cool. It built it out already. I just got to do some back end stuff, right? Like, can you imagine? Like now, I'm basically an engineer, right?
I know.
And so like that's the cool thing about AI. I think it kind of helps bring access to us in a lot
Mhm.
of ways. Like before, you'd probably have to pay $10,000
Oh,
to
yeah.
an engineer. Not that I'm trying to take away from the engineers, but like, come
Yeah,
on, like it makes it
it
accessible.
does. And there's that whole thing around a lot of people are going to be losing their jobs because AI is making it so much easier. But I feel like it's the same thing. Like you've got to get up with the technology and become an expert with the AI in the field that you're doing. You know, I feel like that's the next step for us as therapists and all these fields that are going to be losing jobs because of AI. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's so
Absolutely.
interesting.
So yeah, those are the things that I'm using right now.
I love it. I can't wait to go check out Emergent. I'm such a geek with this. I was just telling somebody before in another podcast episode, I was like, I need to lock myself in a room for like 3 weeks because there's not enough
I'm just
time.
doing so many things out there, and there's still like constant involvement in
Yeah,
new products coming out. So like it's a lot. It's a lot of cool
it
stuff too.
really is. It's so cool. I just love it. I love this technology. So tell us about how people work with you, how they find you, and all of that good stuff.
If anyone's interested in kind of working with me on a one-to-one level, like you can reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. I'm on everything, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on all those things. So just like reach out and let me know if you're interested and set you up and we'll go from there. You know, I like to it's kind of just talk to people, kind of understand what's going on, where you see yourself, where you feel stuck, where like what do you envision. And so kind of really taking a pragmatic approach, if you will, to kind of helping therapists it can be like therapy in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
right? Kind of helping kind of understand where we are and like what we're envisioning for ourselves and what we hope for the future and kind of like understanding and relearning and retraining our brains around like yes, I'm a therapist, but I'm also like a program manager, a project manager. Like you can embrace those things and step into those things. You have to be willing to do that. So Yeah, just reach out to me through social media, really, or my website, www.awehsupportservices.com. You can always reach me there as well.
Nice. Oh, exciting. It's so nice to meet you and learn about everything you're doing. Thank you for coming.